Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Little Girls Aren't Taught This. I am your host, self-love empowerment coach and that feminist friend that you all need, Lydia McCartney. And I just really want to take a minute to say, if you listened to the last episode, wasn't it just the most heartwarming thing you've ever known? I was so grateful that I got the opportunity to do that episode with Nikita. So this week's episode is all about honouring yourself. And I'll be honest, before I started recording this podcast episode, I was like, what am I going to talk about today? Because, my energy is not the best today. I'm going in for an operation this afternoon and I'm feeling a little bit unsettled in myself. And I think I was trying to force something to come through that just wasn't there for me to talk about. And it's like the penny dropped and I was like, oh my God, just talk about this process. Just talk about honouring yourself on these days. So before we do that, as you all know, I love to pull the cards before we get into it. So I really took time to put my energy into this one and it come out enlightened heart and mind, and it's regroup. And it says, be willing to update your information regularly. Keep asking questions. Are you operating under an influence of outmodeled data? Have you opened your heart to learning new things and a new way of thinking and a new way of doing things? Be willing to admit that you're wrong or have made a mistake. It's the only way to learn. So that may apply to some of you. It may not. I just think it's a gorgeous little element to bring into the process. So yeah, what do I want to talk about today? Okay, so I really want to talk about honouring yourself, and I think for me, it's a really important process when it comes to self-love. And actually, it's a really important process when you begin to embody who you are and all the different layers of who you are and how you show up. And I think often we have so many expectations on ourselves, and a lot of that can feed into self-expectations, expectations from others, but also seeking that validation from other people. And I think sometimes we get caught in that cycle of trying to perform and trying to give everything, but burning out and our own cup slowly draining down and our own energy really draining down. And often I find for women and clients that I work with, they only make the efforts to really connect to themselves or really do the things that they need to fill their own cup up when they're on the verge of burnout, or they feel like everything is becoming overwhelming. So for me, the process of self-love is really important in that, because essentially what it's about is, if for example, you're having a day like me today, usually I really want to make, I want to step into my higher self when I record these podcasts, and I want to look like my higher self, dress like my higher self, energetically be in that space. Because when I press record on that camera, I want her to be reflecting out to the world. Today, I'm sitting in my tie-dye t-shirt that's oversized with Care Bears on the front of it, and it's purple. I've just washed my hair, and I'm not, if I were to compare that to my higher self, I'm not exactly being or showing up as my higher self 100% today. But it's okay, and I think it's really important for me to show those sides. And it's also really important to know that we can still get stuff done, and we can still show up, even if we're not showing up how we usually like to. So even if we're not meeting that expectation that we always have for ourselves or we put in place around certain things, it's okay for us to still show up and do and give and be and provide impact and love to. So it's to you guys receiving this podcast and this information, but also the love that it will be reciprocated back to me, and it's all okay. So honouring yourself, just feel into that for a minute. Is that difficult for you? Do you truly know what that means? When you're having your moments when you don't feel 100% and you feel like you can't make sense of things, or you wake up and you just feel tired. You just feel like you don't have it in you to give to other people. Maybe you don't have it in you to exercise. Maybe you don't have it in you to sit and be present on social media if you've got a business or whatever it is for you. It can be simple things like maybe you just don't have the energy to give to your partner. to give as much to your children, to give as much to your colleagues on that day. And I just invite you to reflect on that for a moment and think, when you're actually in that space, what's your go-to behaviour? Do you listen to yourself in those moments, or do you actually just do that thing where you put a brave face on, or you plod on, or you get on with the day, and you never actually stop to tune in and honour how it is that you're feeling? And I think it's really important for women because we go through various cycles where obviously our periods, where our energy is different, and our hormones are changing, and that determines how we are showing up to the world. And I think even if you link that to just how we're taught about our periods, we're never actually taught about the cycles that our body and our energy goes through. So if we don't even honour ourselves in that moment when biologically things are happening, that is expected and is okay and is like so normal, how difficult is it going to be to honour yourself if you just wake up one day and you don't feel like you're being your best self, or you don't feel like you're just there? And I think one of the important things is really accepting that that's okay, and just accepting that, you know what, we don't have to have everything figured out every day. And sometimes it's okay for us to be selfish. Like sometimes it's okay for us to fill our own cup up and really honour how we're feeling above other people. Like that doesn't make us any less than. That doesn't mean that we don't love people the same way. That doesn't mean that we're not caring people or we don't care about people. But what it actually means is that we are choosing to show ourselves that level of love that is required on that day. And it's about taking the pressure off, isn't it? It's about taking the pressure. And I want to say the word shame, that's a word that's coming forward and landing. And I think we may not, shame is such like a loaded word, I think. But actually, there can be that level of shame if there's that scarcity around being vulnerable, whether that's with yourself or that's with somebody else. And I think sometimes just stopping and going, I don't want to do that, can be a little bit vulnerable. Beginning to set boundaries can be a little bit vulnerable. It can be scary. But I think it's a really important part of the process if we're going to begin to unravel these expectations and step away from these expectations that we hold against ourselves. And honouring yourself is not just about honouring, and I always say this when it comes to self-love, honouring yourself is not just about doing it in the moments when everything feels good, because it's easy in those moments. It's so easy to show up for yourself in the moments where everything's aligning. You feel good, you feel alive. It's actually really difficult to show up for yourself in moments when you don't feel 100%, because you fall into that back and forth battle with yourself, don't you? So like for me, for example, today, there was a part of me that was like, I don't want to do the podcast episode today. I don't want to have to put makeup on. I don't want to have to, I just don't feel like I've got it in me to step into that space that I usually am in when I go to record. And then there was also a part of me that was like, no, you have to do it. Like, you have to put it out, Lydia. Like, there's no room to maneuver this, because if you don't do it, you don't know what your recovery is going to be like after your operation. And I think for the morning, even that really depleted my energy, to be honest, because even that was like a constant back and forth battle. And then I noticed I was procrastinating on a lot of things. And actually what I was trying to do is force myself to do something, when the reality is if I just took a step back and made a compromise. So like, this is a compromise, showing up in my tie-dye t-shirt, and it's fine, by the way, it's a cool t-shirt. But it allowed me to relax into the process and take the pressure off. And it allowed me to really lower the expectations for myself. And it also allowed me to feel into the magic of what's in this moment right now. So if I forced something to occur, this episode right now would not be happening. When actually I just felt into the moment and I was like, what is it that I'm feeling right now that actually could be like super relevant for people listening to this podcast? Because I know it's something that we all really, really struggle with. So I would invite you to do a journaling session around truly honouring yourself. But go to those moments where you know that you really struggle. So it could be like if you're the type of person who has a lot of guilt around not exercising. Let's say one day you set an expectation that you're going to exercise for 5 days. Excuse me, one morning you wake up and energetically you just don't want to do it, or emotionally you just don't want to do it. What can you do in that moment to honour both sides of yourself? So what can you do in that moment to honour the side of you that is aligned, this higher self side that really wants to exercise and feel good and feel healthy, but then this other side of you that is just like, today I really don't want to do it. Like today I just want a little bit of a sleep in, or I just want to come home after work and chill out on the sofa. Begin to think of ways that you can honour the two sides, because you don't want to shut one down and neglect the needs of one side of yourself. And that's very important. And I think we live in a culture where we are very like, push through it and do it and be motivated in whatever it is. But you know what? That's amazing. But what we're failing to do, like I've said, is honour the sides of ourselves and the versions of us that don't want to do that. And we will all have these different versions of ourselves where there's certain behaviours or things that we have to do that we don't necessarily want to do every single day, all the time, with the same energy. And I think that's really important. And then what I would also say is feel into the sides of you. So like if you're somebody's partner, you're somebody's mother, wife, whatever it is, how can you honour yourself and how can you begin to communicate that so you're filling your own cup up? Because the thing I always say to people as well when it comes like why it's really important to honour yourself is because you cannot you cannot continue to pour and pour and pour and expect it to come back to you if you're not taking the time to replenish it. It's like a garden. Like if you give and give and give and give but fail to replenish it, then is it going to grow? Is it going to have the things that it needs? So your growth is that you need to give that love back to yourself. If within your self-love garden, if you're watering and you're giving every other plant the light and the shade and the attention and you're talking to it and you're being there for it, but then you're neglecting your own self, like would you expect your plant to grow? No, it's not going to do that. So it's really, really important for you to understand how you can begin to honour yourself in these relationships and in these dynamics, and doing that without an association of guilt towards doing that. Because I don't know why we've come to that notion that if we give, we're not going to burn out. If we give, we're just going to have an endless stream of self-love and energy coming back to us. And it doesn't really work like that, because the other thing is that if you're not honouring yourself and you're giving and you're not honouring your own self-love cup, other people are going to help you and add to that, add to that process of filling it back up, add to that process of making you feel good. But essentially it's your cup to fill. So you need to do the majority of the work. You need to give the majority of the love to fill that cup back up. And that's why it's so important to take that time and take that space and do it without, like I've said, without the guilt associated to it. So I feel like today is a super short podcast episode, but I just feel like it was something that felt relevant to me, something that I'm feeling into in this moment, something that not a lot of people truly understand the meaning of honouring themselves. Because, when I do programs or I do one-on-one sessions with people and I ask them about honouring themselves and they say, yeah, they do. And then we go into these experiences, what we begin to realise is they honour 10, 20, 30%, but they don't truly submerge themselves into that process of honouring what's going on. And recently I had this with one of my clients, my one-on-one clients, and she was going through a tough time in the process of coaching, and a lot of stuff was coming up because she was going through big shifts and she was trying to resist the process, but she was telling me that she was honouring herself. So when we got on a call, I was saying to her, tell me how you're actually truly honouring the things that are showing up. And it transpired that she wasn't. She was honouring a side that felt comfortable, a certain level that still met her expectations. And definitely there was a level that kept that guilt away from truly going there, going to the depths of what was needed in those moments. And when we felt into that, she was like, oh my God, I'm not truly honouring the whole experience, because in a way, I'm trying to bypass it. And in a way, I'm rushing for it to be over. And in a way, I feel like I'm honouring it, but I'm not actually going to the root of what needs to be seen and held and uncovered. And, you know, sometimes a bubble bath can solve that. And sometimes going for a nice walk can solve that. And we will notice the days if we feel a little bit burnt out or overwhelmed, that those things will suffice enough for us to fill our own cup up. But actually the reality is, a lot of the time we need something a little bit deeper. We need something that's going to hold us and cradle us and give our internal world that sense of soothing. And a lot of the time when we're showing up and we're not being our best selves, we actually need an abundance of love in return. We need it without judgment. We need it without resistance. And it's about finding that sweet spot where you can really make the compromise. If you're going through something very difficult, a certain part of that is, it's compromising. Because, you know, it's like last year when I was in my bad space, I couldn't afford to just sit and dwell on it every single day. I still had things that needed to be done and ways to show up. However, I made sure every single day there was a compromise in that day. There was a compromise for me. There was different expectations. There was expectations of me when I was showing up and I felt aligned in my best self. And then I had a set of expectations where when I wasn't showing up as my best self, it's okay, because my expectations shifted for that day. If you have this certain list of things that you expect from yourself or others expect from you, and they come into play every single day, well, if you're not showing up as that version of yourself, how on earth are you meant to meet those expectations? How are you meant to live by those things? If your mental health's not feeling good, if your anxiety's bad, if you feel drained, exhausted, how are you meant to do that? You're not. So it's really, really important to feel into different levels, to set different levels of expectations and also different levels of boundaries. Because a part of honouring ourselves is setting boundaries. So like with this podcast today, usually I have like a really high boundary in place when it comes to recording and setting up and the whole energy around it. And today I can't match that. One, I can't match the expectation, which means the boundary is way out of my reach, which means for me, I feel like that's why I was very in my head and procrastinating, because I knew the expectations and the boundaries were just not serving me today. That's just not who I'm showing up as today. So I lowered that expectation. And lowering your expectation doesn't mean that you're saying you're not worthy or you're not showing up as your best self or you're not deserving. Actually, what it's saying is, what's the level I can give today? And let that be my expectation of myself. So it's not about saying, you know, I'm going to lower my expectation on how people treat me. Actually, it's an expectation from yourself that comes with love. And that's the most important thing. Like, you do it with love instead of that resistance. So when that expectation lowers, that boundary lowers, but actually the same outcome is still happening. I'm still here recording a podcast episode, and I'm actually recording a podcast episode with something that feels super relevant to come on and talk about in the moment. So you're not disempowering yourself on those days when you just slightly lower your expectations and slightly lower your boundaries. Even it applies to the gym. Like, if your expectations are, you know, you can go in and lift X amount of weight, and then one day you go in and you know you're not feeling it, just lower that expectation of yourself. Like, lower the weight, lower the time that you work out for, set that strict boundary with yourself that you're not going to go over. You're going to try your best to stay away from any rejection, any shame, any internal resistance for this process on this day. And then just go in and hit that expectation. Because aren't you going to feel better if you hit that expectation rather than if you stay to that standard and that expectation that you usually set and you fail to reach it. Like, think about that energetically. Like, you're just adding a lot of internal resistance and you're truly not honouring how you're showing up on that day. And that's where you find the sweet spot. So I hope this podcast episode was helpful. It was short, it was snappy, but it just felt really relevant. So yeah, love it. As you all know, the Divine waiting list is open, which, oh my God, so many of you have already signed up to, which is just absolutely incredible. And if you don't know what my Divine Transformation Program is, it is a 10-week in-depth coaching program. And we go through all the blocks, all the areas, in your life that block you from connecting deeply to self-love and stop you and block you from deeply connecting to yourself. So this round has been extended because it started off as 6 and then it went up to 8, and then every time I get the feedback, people are like, we need more time. So it's 10 weeks and it's just absolutely incredible. It's like such a deep healing journey with myself, other incredible women. The support networks are just insane. And yeah, there's a lot of added bonuses coming this round. So there's special guest coaching calls from an intuitive eating coach, a coach who works with moon cycles and astrology. There is a private yoga session, and there's going to be like bonus modules recorded on abundance and money mindset and trauma. So there's a lot, and you have access to this actually for the lifetime. So I will put the link to sign up for the waiting list in the show notes, and the doors don't open for around another 2 weeks. So limited spaces as well. So I'm just like so excited because I just know what's about to come, and I know what women are about to step into, and it just blows my mind every time. Every time a round ends, it just blows my mind, to be honest. So that was today's podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you took something from it. And please download as always. Please share. Please let me know on Instagram. Tag me. Let me know how you found it. And I just want to say thank you to every single person that listens. And I shall be back next week for another episode. Hopefully my recovery goes well today. And I shall speak to you all soon. Have a beautiful weekend. Take care.